Hello, everyone. This is another Black Conservative. I'm Ryan Bowling. Thank you all for joining me. What I want to talk about in this video is something that's pretty disgusting. And what that is that there's been this onslaught of brawls or fights breaking out at Disneyland, Disney World, whichever one you want to call it. I've never been. I've always wanted to go, never could afford to go. And maybe perhaps in the future I'll be able to afford to do so. But after having seen this brawl taking place at Disneyland, and not just this one brawl, but several others, I don't know if I want to go now. These fights have been breaking out at Disneyland, and it has become to the point that it's almost like, as this article says, the writer of this article says, have become a violent neighborhood. And that's an embarrassing situation for a company, a business, an organization whose reputation has been family oriented to go down the road of utter darkness and embarrassment, for lack of a better word. So let's get into this article, because I definitely, as I studied this article and looked over this article, I definitely have something to say about that on several different fronts. So let's get right into this article. And it starts off with, the happiest place on earth has turned into a dangerous neighborhood. The Walt Disney Company has posted online notices asking visitors to its theme park to, quote, treat others with respect and to show each other, quote, compassion. Really? I guess that's supposed to stop people from doing the wrong thing. In the wake of series of brawls that have gone viral, including the massive Magic Kingdom slugfest in July. I think I did a video on this during that time before, but I was speaking on a different aspect. Here I want to say something else that I think is extremely important. But I think I did a video on this back in July. But let's go on. Disney posted the warning notices on its site for Disney World in Orlando and Disneyland Disneyland. We ask all who come to this happy place to treat others, happy place, to treat others with respect, kindness, and compassion, the notice section stated. Visitors can be asked to leave if they, quote, fail to comply with park rules. As Breitbart News reported in July, a massive fight broke out at the Magic Kingdom in Disney World between two families. Captured on video, the Jerry Springer-like incident, which took place in Fantasyland, appeared to involve two families throwing punches and dragging each other on the ground while shouting profanity. And I have this says the slugfest quickly went viral, creating a publicity nightmare for Disney. Okay. Now, and there's a video of this. Like I said, I don't have the software for you guys to see this, but if you go to the description box below and click onto that and go to the title of this article and you glean down in this article, it will give you the video. And it's pretty disgusting. It's pretty disgusting. And I don't want to get into the details of the families that do this fighting. But I'm going to get into that after I deal with my commentary, because I definitely have something to say about this. And I believe personally why I believe we have in these type of increases in violence in a place that's known to be a family-oriented place. What's going on here? Article goes on. Other fights have broken out this year in both Disney World and Disneyland. As reported by multiple outlets, there have been recent physical brawls and shouting matches at the Orlando park, while a fight erupted at the Fantasmic show at Disneyland in May. And they shown this here. It's pretty bad. It's embarrassing. The Orange County Register reported that visitors have been removed from Disneyland or issued citations for violent behavior in recent months. Disney, whose stock is on track for its worst performance, get this now, since 1974. You see something going on here? Has experienced a blitz of bad news this year, including weak profitability that prompted the firing of CEO Bob Chapek and the return of former CEO Bob Iger. And I think Bob Chapek, if that's the way you pronounce his name, this guy is a complete, I don't know why. I'm trying to be nice about this. But this guy, he's the one, this CEO, Bob Chapek, is the one that's been pushing this overtly sexual imagery in Disney movies and Disney cartoons towards young people. This man is disgusting. He needed to be fired. He's disgusting. Let's go on. Let's go on. Disney also picked an ill-advised fight with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over the state's anti-grooming parental rights in education law. The company has increasingly embraced radical LGBTQ activism and has incorporated transgender ideology into its entertainment for children. Disney shares are down more than 40% so far this year. And that's the end of the article. You have to ask yourself a question. Why is that? Why is their shares down that far? What's going on here? It seems evident that the reason why their shares are down is because a lot of people are like, I don't want to go see your movies, because your movies and your cartoons and your so-called entertainment is pushing a radical agenda towards my child, my son, my daughter. I said this before. As a consenting adult, let's put a disclaimer out here. As a consenting adult, I have no problem with people's lifestyle, what they do with their lifestyle as a consenting adult. I may not support it or even agree with it. But that's your choice. That's what you want to do. You're an adult. You do what you want to do. But when it comes to the children, that's where I and any moral human being would draw the line. Children are not at an age where they have the cognitive ability to make mature choices like that. Now, whether you want to call it grooming or whatever, which I personally, in my opinion, believe it is, there's a much darker agenda going on here. Whatever you want to call it, you shouldn't be pushing this kind of nonsense on the children. This could explain why their profit sharing has dropped and why they've been. You had a CEO who's pushing this type of stuff on these kids. That makes me feel like, man, you some kind of pedophile or something. Why are you pushing this? What's wrong with you? He gets fired. Good. I don't feel sorry for him. I don't feel sorry for him. You embrace that kind of stuff on young people. You don't need to be nowhere in a business position. But having said that, let's get down to the nudie swoot here, okay? This is, and I hate to end the year on this kind of note, but it is what it is. It's the news, you know. It's my commentary on the news, rather. I hate to end the year on this, but this has to be addressed. When I watched this video, I hate to deal with this, and I get a lot of slack for this. Guess who the ethnicity was that was in this big brawl? Fighting and calling each other names and cussing each other out like they out here in the hood. You already know what I'm about to say. Unfortunately, they were black. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't any other ethnic groups that were fighting, but the one I saw was black. Now, this is disgusting, because here we have a place that's supposed to have been known to be a place that is family oriented, and yet they seem to have lost all sense of morality. But let me back up a little bit, because I'm going a little bit too fast here. I'm going to deal with the black aspect in a minute, but let me deal with the Walt Disney name, the country, the company, the business, the organization. It has always been known, or rather Walt Disney has always been known to have had some nefarious goings on many, many decades ago, okay? People have accused that company of pedophilia and subliminal messaging in the cartoons and so forth. I don't know, because I grew up watching Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, and I didn't see any of that imagery. It wasn't until recently that I started seeing this kind of stuff and reading about this kind of stuff. And maybe that was true. Maybe they had some undercover sexual innuendos in the cartoons and so forth that none of us young people knew anything about, but that it was designed supposedly to get into the subconscious of young people, okay? Maybe that was true. Maybe that was true. But the issue is, why Why is these type of things going on now? Because even during the time of this undercover sexual connotations, the Walt Disney name did not have this kind of negativity attached to it. We didn't have these kind of fights breaking out at Walt Disneyland or whatever. We didn't have this kind of stuff. Well, why is it so overt now? And in my opinion, based on what I've been observing and based on what I said at the end of reading that article, is that I believe the main reason for that is because Walt Disney, the company, the business, the name, the organization has said, we're not going to hold back now. Back in the 1930s and the early days with Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, we was undercover. We was undercover. We were trying to get your children, but we was undercover. Okay, I'm just saying if that theory was correct. Okay, that Walt Disney business and company and so forth was putting sexually provocative images in the cartoons and so forth, but they just hid it. Okay, we was undercover then. Now we coming out big time. Now we're not undercover. Now we're going to have overtly homosexual characters in the cartoons and transgender characters in the cartoons in your face, and we're going to promote this towards children. We're not going to hide it this time. So you may be saying, well, what does it have to do with fights breaking out? Because the moral fabric, if you want to call it a moral fabric, that used to cover Walt Disney, if you will, whether it's a real covering or a pseudo covering that covered Walt Disney, is no longer covering Walt Disney. It's been lifted completely, because at least during this time, they had some semblance of morality. They had some semblance of mutual respect for the young people. But now it's like, we don't care. We're going to come right out in the open. Why? Because look, for 4 years, Trump messed us up. I'm giving you guys my opinion. I'm giving you guys my theory of this. For 4 years, Trump messed us up. He slowed us down with his anti-globalist, anti-transgender ideologies. He slowed us down. We dealt with 4 years of his morality. But now we are free now under the Biden administration. And now we are going to push this big time. We're not holding back, because we believe that a lot of people out here are supporting this. But the facts show different. Because if your stocks is down like that, then don't you think that perhaps the parents and the adults are like, we don't want to see this flaring filth that you're showing to my 6-year-old and 7-year-old daughter and son. Don't you think that might be the reasoning? I think so. The moral fabric has been lifted up from Walt Disney, from the name, from the organization, from the business. And now we got all these fights breaking out. And now we got people acting a plumb dumb fool at a place that's supposed to be family oriented. It is a doggone shame. It's a doggone shame. But now let's get back to the aspect of it being that this family unfortunately being black. Now, people have gotten on me for this and have said, and not just me, but I've heard other black conservatives get this same kind of criticism. Man, you putting black people down. You're putting black people down by constantly talking about this. Well, for one, I don't believe I'm putting black people down. I'm not putting black people down the way I see it. I'm exposing negative behavior that a certain segment of black people commit that has a reflection on other black people. I believe that you can't progress. If there's a problem that needs to be fixed, you can't progress towards positivity, towards intellectual stimulation and intellectual growth and spiritual growth if you don't deal with the problem at hand. If you just whitewash the problem and say nothing's going on, it's going to stay that way. And the imagery that people are seeing, they're going to begin to act that imagery out. They're going to begin to treat that particular ethnic group based on the imagery that they've been seeing. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure most people that are African American or of African descent, whichever way you want to put that, that's watching this video, know what I'm talking about. That you may be someone with decent morals. You may have a business mindset. You may be someone who believes in getting out there and doing what you need to do to get what you need to get. You may be a law-abiding citizen, but people from other groups may treat you somewhat in a different way. I believe part of the reason for that, and when I say different way, I mean negatively, is because of the imagery they see on the news and in person. This is the stuff that they see. So they start to backtrack from us. We're decent black people in the country, but the imagery they see, blacks fighting at Disneyland, blacks acting a fool at downtown Tower City, all over the country, being ghetto. I hate to use that term, but unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. In order to grow and progress, those issues have to be addressed. So I'm not putting black people down. I'm just exposing a certain segment of black people in a certain segment of black people or a certain demographic within the black community that tends to embrace negative attitudes and approaches. Now, once again, for people that say, okay, you putting black people down, okay, I find that interesting because here I got an image of a black man right here. Original black. His name is Thomas Sowell, for those that don't know. Thomas Sowell was born at a time where racism and the KKK was running rampant. I'm not going to get into all of the details of that, but he was born during a time where racism and the KKK was running rampant. But not only did he survive, but he became, according to critics, he became one of the most brilliant social theorists in American history. That's what people say. That's what critics say. He has become one of the most brilliant social theorists in American history. And not only was he a social theorist, but he was also a prominent economist. A prominent economist. Here's a bright, very bright man. I've read quite a few of his books. Over his prolific career, he has written over 30-something books. I own 22 of those books. So I'm getting there. Okay. So I know the mindset of Thomas Sowell. And you may be saying, okay, Mr. Bowling, what's the point are you trying to get to? Well, with this African-American or black man that I have one of his books sitting behind, which, by the way, incidentally, is a biography of his life written by Jason Riley, who is another black social theorist. Okay, but that's another story and I digress. Thomas Sowell's argument is that the reason why that black people within this certain segment or demographic have the kind of attitudes, they fail, they have the lowest scores academically, highest rates of abortion, highest rates of sexuality, all the negative things that seem to stem in, unfortunately, among people within this segment of the black community, is because Thomas Sowell's argument is because of culture. It isn't because of their intellect, because if it was because of their intellect, then why would people like Thomas Sowell be such a bright man? Why would people like Walter Williams, who passed several years ago, by the way, he was another black economist, be so intelligent? What about people like Booker T. Washington during his time? Huh? Black man, highly intelligent. What was the other guy? W.E. Du Bois, first black man to earn his PhD. It's not an intellectual problem. So what's going on here? And Thomas Sowell's argument is the issue is culture. Blacks no longer in 2022 America, and particularly ever since the 70s, no longer embrace education anymore. What blacks tend to embrace now is, well, you know what? I don't need to go to school. I don't need to educate myself. That's being like the white man. Trying to get good scores in math and history and English. That's being like the white man. So they don't study. They don't focus. Unfortunately, blacks within this segment of the black community embrace things that are destructive to them or do not add anything to their intellectual growth or progress. And I said this in a previous video, and I'll say it here. What a lot of black people within this segment of the black community embrace is twerking. I'm just real with you. Tamatoa is a twerk video. I see this all the time downtown. Groups of young people. It's Christmas Eve. You downtown, 10:30 at night. The mall closed at 7. I'm off at 11. You downtown inside Tower City at 10:30 at night. Inside the place, grouped together with your phone in front of you twerking. I said, if y'all don't get y'all knuckleheads out of here, it's going to be a problem. Get out of here and go home. That's the kind of stuff that these young people, unfortunately, within this segment of the black community embrace. And it's sad. So I agree with Thomas Sowell's theory and assessment of this, that it's a cultural problem, not an intellectual problem. As black people, we have the ability to be some of the brightest people in the country because at one point we were. So what happened? Let me say this and summing this video up. What happened was, in part, was there was a group of people that began to infiltrate the school systems in the 1960s and became prominent in the 1970s called multiculturalists. They were part of a movement known as multiculturalism. Multiculturalism was a movement and a philosophy and a worldview that basically said every ethnic group and all the nation ethnic groups are all equal, they're all the same, which is not totally true, and that's another video in and of itself. But I'll explain that later, though. The idea of multiculturalists is, look, you guys teaching these black people math and history and science from a Eurocentric perspective, and you have stripped them from their homeland in Africa due to slavery. So what you need to do, you need to start teaching them their African roots. Now, these multiculturalists may have been sincere in their efforts. In my personal opinion, I don't think they were. I think that they purposely did that to destroy the black community, intellectually and monetarily and economically, but that's another story, and I digress. You guys need to replace that, these multiculturalists said, with black studies. You need to replace that with things that are conducive to the black community. That's the reason why these blacks, according to the multiculturalist worldview, are failing in the tests and so forth. That's the reason why the academic scores are so low, because you're teaching them Eurocentric philosophies and ideologies, which makes no sense because, like I said, people like Thomas Sowell and others exceeded in those areas. What makes them different from black people then and now? Nothing. Nothing except what we embrace and what we value. We no longer embrace and value anymore. What do the black community collectively embrace and value within this particular segment of the black community? We don't embrace education anymore because we've been told by the multiculturalists that that's trying to be white. And what was happening was blacks began to embrace that worldview. These multiculturalists infiltrated the school systems and they became a part of academia. Okay? And they began to have meetings where they would talk about this type of stuff. And the curriculum in the schools all over the country started changing. Not saying anything is wrong with black studies or any of that. But when you're taking the SAT test and you competing with someone from another country like Russia or China or whatever, and they're beating you on math and history and all the rest, and here you is talking about black studies, do you think that's going to help you? When you get out here to get a job, you think that's going to help you? We're in America. We're not in Russia. We're not in China. We're not in Africa. We're in America. So we need to understand how America operates so that we can be successful like other black people like Thomas Sowell and others were successful if we want to be. But they changed things up. So the curriculum was changed, and as the curriculum was changed, it began to have a negative backlash on a certain segment of black people in the community, and that black people, and all of a sudden we started going downhill economically and also academically. And so I believe and accept Thomas Sowell's argument on why the black community is failing in terms of economics, but also intellectualism, mainly intellectually, because of the culture. The things that we value now are destructive to the black community. And when I say we, I'm not saying all blacks. I'm talking about a certain segment. Maybe we reiterate that. A certain segment of the black community, because it was not like this before. And we can't blame this on slavery, because if that was the case, Thomas Sowell wouldn't be successful. He was in the 1930s. Come on, man. He was one generation away from the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. William E. Du Bois and all those people. Come on, let's stop it. Let's stop it. Come on now. Frederick Douglass, a former slave, educated himself, became one of the greatest oratory speakers of all time. Really? Is that the issue? No, it's what the black culture embraces now. Let's get back to a time where we embrace intellectualism. Let's get back to a time where we embrace cracking open that book and reading. Huh? Let's get back to time to doing that. And then maybe things will start getting better in our community, because we are embracing the wrong things that's destroying our community. It's cool to fight now. It's cool to be. I'm not going to even go into all the details, because this video is going longer than he normally does. But I could talk about this all day. We're embracing the wrong things, man. And so that's what I think that this issue is led up to with Walt Disney, but also in other areas as well. That's just my opinion on it. That's just my view. What do you guys think about this situation with Walt Disney, with these big fights and brawls coming out? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. God bless you all, and see you again. And also, have a happy new year.